All right. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to our lecture and our live streaming show with the, what did you call it, Ben, by the way? What did you
Greatest losses.
That's what Ben called it, but I ran out because I've been here for 3 weeks. I ran out of my greatest losses. I mean, sorry, but I haven't lost 2 dozens of games that are so painful. I mean, if I were to blunder more than 20 times in my life, I wasn't probably that good to become a grandmaster. But so I turn my point to critical moments because a lot of those painful losses or hard ones happen when we miss critical moments. So tonight, I'm going to talk about critical moments, decision making, cognitive biases a little bit, and I bring for you from GRENKE 2019 games that I've played in the past few days, taking place in Karlsruhe in Germany with Carlsen, Caruana, Anand, all the top players, and Vincent Kaima, the wonder boy from Germany, who has a tough time. He lost all of his games, but okay, he's learning new things. So and there are 2 games of his in this episode, but just I want to say that I'm not trying to pick on the kid. Just happens to fit in the material. So talking about the complex and critical moments. What would define a critical moment in chess? What do you think?
Win or loss.
Well, something like the only moves, for example, right? We can say the only moves. What else? From the audience, from live? Anyone's live? Nothing's going on with Ben. Ben's. What do you think? Critical moments in chess. Win or loss or draw, like decisive moments when the game will be decided. Well, sometimes you just are worse and you cannot improve the position. That's another story. But there are moments that you can save the game to a draw, or you're about to win the game, you miss the win, and all these moments, these are critical. What else? Turning points. Moving from one phase and stage of a game to another. Moving from the opening and you're almost done with your development and it's time to, what I'm going to do with my pieces. It's a complex Sicilian middle game, or it's not always a dragon where you castle long and your opponent castle short and you know where you're heading to and your opponent knows, more or less. It can be more complex. So that's those turning points. So you have to make a decision and base your decision on a plan, a long-term plan, because that's how we think. We're not going move by move like computers. So I picked up a few points and I'll talk a little bit about how we make decisions and how our decisions could be biased or not being biased. So the first example, this is quoted from Grandmaster Thomas Luther from his book. It's a game that has been in different books, but I happened to see it in his work, is that the obvious is not always an answer. What do we call obvious? So what we have recollection in our memories, or what seemed to be plausible. So let's look at this position. Of course, there are 2 results, right? White's not going to lose. I mean, the worst can happen is that you promote and take it. But this is a moment that either black can save this position, or he's going to lose, right? Now let me give everyone 3 minutes because we have also live audience and there's a 20 seconds delay. So, can black save this position? If so, how? Is it a calm day, Ben?
What?
Is it a calm day? Any comments?
Yeah, plenty, but I can't get to them yet.
Okay.
Sure. I mean, I know what I would do as black.
What would you do as black?
Put the king in front of the pawn.
Okay. What's the follow-up? I play king c5.
Then I go to the second and to prepare the advance of the pawn. I want to make him either give up that rook for the draw.
Okay. So you want to go king f3, king e2. What do you think?
I'm looking at king e3 actually.
King f3, king c5, and then king e3.
I'm sorry.
So what's your first move? What's your first move?
Yeah, king f3.
King c5.
And then king e3.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we have two very interesting answers.
When they say interesting, that means wrong.
Well, no, I don't want to say which one is right, which one is wrong, because you know there are two different answers, right? One of them is right. If I divulge that information, then people who are watching live they would know the answer right now. Okay.
Online, Tom says king f3, and Piggy Pig Pig says king g5. Juan says king f3 and pass the king to the e file and then advance the pawn.
Well, so where exactly on the e file now? The question is. Now the king has to go to f3. So the first thing, a lot of people would say, "Oh, push the pawn, f3, f2." Well, first of all, f3 doesn't work, and we are in time. And when the king goes to g2, the king goes to e2, rook comes to f1, grabs the pawn, doesn't work. So the obvious is not always the answer. The obvious is not always the answer. So king goes to f3, and then white plays king c5. So I'm going to make this comment. The obvious move is not always the right one. So king c5. Now, you have three choices on the e file. You both, gentlemen, you were right. And who said on the e file? Thomas was that? Who said put the king on the e file?
That was Juan.
Juan. Okay. You guys are very right. There are three squares on the e file. Which one do you pick?
I'm going to the second so I can keep the rook off.
And you go to e3. You stick to e3. Yeah. You already made up your mind. You know, in an actual game, you have one choice to make, right? You cannot go take back your move, right? Anyone said now, where do they play? King e4, king e3, or king e2?
King e2 says chess king.
Chess king says king e2.
Thumbs up.
He got a one thumbs up here. Okay. What else? Okay, I'll give another 30 seconds to this. If you have more comments, and then I will show the answer.
Was this from a game?
This was from a material produced by Grandmaster Thomas Luther. Someone has given it to me, some of my students, and I saw a very high value, educational value in it, and then I've included it in my lecture. Well, the reason is that the final position will remind you of some very interesting games. Who was in my lecture that I talked about Ding Liren again, Topalov against Ding Liren, the knight versus rook? Were you guys here? Last week. The knight versus bishop. Were the knight versus rook? Yeah. Yeah, the knight versus rook.
Okay.
You were there?
Yes.
Okay. All right. So because this kind of related to that one. Okay. Any comments, Ben? Shall we proceed? I'm waiting for you.
Nothing new.
All right. So the right score is king to e3. e2 and e4 are losing. e4 is too far. Oh, sorry. e4 is too far. Let me see. Too far from the promotion. So king c4, f3, rook e1 check. And then I bring my king, and it's going to be. So that one was not that hard to figure. But king e2, the problem is I go king d4, f3, I go rook a2 check, and then I play king e3. That is the problem. So here after king to e3, rook a3 check, where do we go?
Now,
Why we go to e2?
Same problem, king d4, f3. Now we go king e4. We go king e4. Now we are shouldering the king. So the entire idea of putting the king is that I stop the king from getting close to the f pawn, and I gradually try to promote my pawn. You see, the obvious is not always the answer again. King e2, I'm going to put the king there and supports f1. That's the first thing you think about. But you have to consider that king on c5, and you have to avoid, you have to shoulder, you have not to let it get close to the f pawn. So after king to e4, rook a4 check, king e3, okay, we cannot make any progress, so I bring my king closer, check. Now you remember Topalov Ding Liren, f2, rook check, and now we have to promote to knight.
right.
Because this is of course leads to checkmate. And those who were here or watched our video last week, we talked almost for 3/4 of the class about this knight endgame. So even though you found all these good moves, just a new story just began. I just want to put a few more moves. Knight d2 check, knight g3. and back. If you are watching this video, try to perfect your defensive technique about this position. Because when you go over the board and you don't have enough time to act, you have to act based on your memory. And memory can be confusing. It can fool you. You may not have memorized it the right way. You may have condensed the difficulty of this position to its elements, which makes it inept, your knowledge. So don't do that. Learn it by hand, the technique, like playing over the board. Play blitz games against your friend over the board, not online, not against an engine or something. And then once it happens over the board, you don't think. Your hand just does what it's supposed to do. Your hand will do what's supposed to do. Sorry. All right. Now, you might say that, okay, this was something, and it may not happen in the game. I actually witnessed one. Didn't happen to me, but I witnessed one, and that was not a good one. Happened to Ray Robson, 2011 World Cup. Let me show you that one. A very interesting game. Any comment?
No.
So Ray at the time was not a. Sorry, I'm going to adjust immediately. Ben's going to kill me for this.
Does his opponent even play anymore? I haven't seen his name in chess in a while.
Bacrot, yeah, he plays. He actually played in this Grenke Open, but he's now solid 2680. Yeah, kind of performed that level. So, but you know, Ray was up and coming, and then this game against Bacrot. So they drew their classical games, and Ray lost the first. Rapid, but then won the second one with the King's Gambit. Beautiful game, and then he was back. And this is game 5. No, so 2 draws, and then this is game 5. So Ray was defending very well. This end game should be a draw. The easiest way to make a draw is that after King D2 is to play F6 G5. Actually, that's the best way to make a draw.
F6
Okay.
and G5?
Sorry,
You said?
F6 and G5. Yeah. So he gave a check. King E3, King F6, Rook A8. Now the plan is to get my king to A7, give up the pawn, and then try to move the rook, and then promote the A pawn. In the meantime, you have to create a counterplay on the other side, right? You start grabbing some material, right, and then create a pass pawn. But Black's king should be active. So, since Black should become active, what should be Black's move here? Here, Ray made a mistake. Again, the obvious is that should I start giving a check, because that Rook A8 makes a difference.
I want to take opposition as Black.
Well, King E5
I
has
use my pawns on the back row checks.
has a problem. King E5 had a problem. Can't remember what it was. But the thing is that King on E5, that's an odd square. I didn't think about that one.
He's not protecting that pawn on F7.
But then I can go King D3. You cannot get too far.
Yeah.
Because you cannot take the pawn on F2 after King E5. If you go King E5, King F2, King D3, oh sorry. Then you cannot take this pawn because I can give a check and then promote. So, but I mean King F5. This check is still fine, but then it's time to act kind of. We have to do something proactive now as Black. We have to take drastic measures. Why? Because the king is heading to B6. I cannot bring my king on the other side to the other side of the board. I cannot just do that as Black as a defender. So I have to do something. Here he made a mistake. He played the move again, the obvious. The fastest way to get to the A2 to F2 pawn is to attack it, right? So I use my rook, but that is too tempting to grab the pawn. And I still have to activate my king to be able to capture, to be able to promote my pawn, to create a 3 against 2, create a pass pawn, and to promote, right? Like the previous game, right? You end up giving this rook for the pawn, you'll have a pass pawn, and then it's gonna be a draw, right? Make sense, everyone here? So here the best move is king 2. He played rook a2, king c5. He took. The best was to play king f5, not rook a2. Just play king f5, king g4, king f3, and take it with the king. I don't know why my notes are not here. I'm just a little bit. I don't know why my notes are not here. Yeah, the best is this one. Let me show you my. Let me try to play from memory. So I can go here. And here, and then I start giving checks. Now I can take this one. Or if I go, there was a small trick here. I can actually play here, and then maybe here. Then I take this, and then if I for example play this move, you cannot just take this pawn on h4 because of rook f4 check. So you just can wait with the rook here. Now it's a draw. Now you want to take on h4 and it's going to be a draw. You see why I cannot do that? Because if I take here, then there's rook check and rook here. Now, but then I have this check. Something's off here. King c6, rook b8. But maybe we are in time. Maybe because we go king b8. I don't know. But let's just look at it. Well, I mean, what's that?
Yeah, that should be good.
Well, I mean, let's see what happens here. This h4. No, this is a draw. This is a draw. Maybe this is not the problem then. Maybe you can just take it actually. Anyways, the point is activating the king. That was the point. So now after this move, after this rook a2, which is a mistake, king c5, rook takes f2. Now white is winning now because we are many tempi behind with our king. But there's only one way to win this position. Now, actually, if someone finds this, I mean, Ben, you should give them some gifts. This is a very tough one. Why to play? So what does white want to do? What does black want to do? Excuse me. King f5, king g4, f6, g5, creating a pass pawn. Sure. King d6.
Yeah.
I can go king, rook a2.
Is this for white or for black?
This is for white. Well, I mean, king d6 is still a white move.
Yeah. I was thinking of something.
Piggy Pig Pig likes rook d8.
That is, I think, or rook c8 is what, rook d8 is what Bacrot played. Okay, that's the right idea. You want to get the rook there, maybe put it on d3 and then push the a pawn. Okay.
Can you address chess kings king b6 followed by king a7?
Yeah, king b6. I go rook f3, king a7. I mean, rook moves, check, and I take it. The problem is that your king cannot leave. So let's see. I mean, I can do that. Just actually, you want to play maybe this move. Then I start giving checks, right? And this. And actually, wait a second. Did I play rook f3 here? I don't need to do that. I can go king f5. Because a7 is a draw, so you have to move the rook somewhere. Let's say rook c8. And I start giving checks. And now I'm active enough to make a draw. If rook c3, f6, g5, and then pass ball. It's going to be a draw. No. If it was that easy, I promise you, he would have seen it.
So whose move is it here?
What's that? It's white to move now.
Where's the move there?
Okay, because I have to cover some more games, and I would like to allocate enough time to all the materials I have prepared for tonight. I'm going to show it to you. The move is rook f8 double exclam. Anybody said that move? No, it's just.
I was analyzing it, but I couldn't find
The point is that this pins down the king to the pawn. So now after rook a2 there, check there, you get to that square, king e7. The thing is, now you cannot go king f5. I take the pawn, right? I take the pawn and, or I mean, do I have to take the pawn actually? No, I don't need to take the pawn. Yeah, I can do that actually. This. And I go here, yeah. And I go king b7, and now I preserved an extra pawn, and there's no pass pawn here.
And you like did the old school thing of building a bridge.
Yeah, I have the bridge, and in the meantime, I'm defending the pawn on h4, which puts me in a winning position. But that's a very valuable tempo, this rook f8. I actually didn't know about it until 1 year ago. I looked at this game again for its educational value, and I was like, oh my God, look at that.
You would think you're making your rook passive by attacking the pawn.
Yeah, but it's just the tempo winning move. Let me just show you the idea one more time. So after rook to f8, yeah, again the obvious is not the answer. Rook a2, king b6, rook b2. So the point is that if I go king e7, trying to dismiss the rook, I win a tempo. So by the time you start pushing the pawn with the king on e7 and not on g4 or not on g3, my pawn is already about to be promoted. So that's just hopeless. Are we good? It was very beautiful, I think, right? So let's continue, but let's see where the drama is. I mean, you haven't seen the drama yet, so. It's a rapid game, and actually this is a rapid of 15 minutes game because they first finished 1-1 in the 25 minutes game, so then they play a 15 minutes game. It's a World Cup game. So this rook d8, so this is a draw now. He's in time. He's in time. I don't know if there's a win here. I doubt if there's a win here. I doubt that. But definitely this is not the way. Definitely this is not the way. Okay? So far so good. And here comes the moment. Black to play. Wait a second. Didn't we just were looking at something similar to this? Yes, we were. But now the h pawn. The h pawn has its own contingencies. First thing is that if you end up with the pawn on h1 equals to knight, is losing, because it will just get stuck in the corner. Any comments?
It's a draw. I mean, black loses.
So it's black's turn, we're guessing is rook.
Black's trying what?
Wait, so you want us to find the best move
For
for black?
black, yeah. Well, I mean, for white, I would have just, if it was white to move, I would have just given a check.
Yeah.
Well, actually, I don't know how can I do that, but let me just open a new board just to explain it to you. In fact, it would be interesting to, it has also educational value. So if it was black, it was white to move this position, you would just give a check, king h2,
And the king over.
king f2, and after this move, you can go, okay, here actually. And then that's it. h2, rook to a6, and that's mate next move.
Wait, but then still. Oh,
No,
no,
that's
so
still-
No, if you go up here, then you get mated.
Yeah.
Oh, why it doesn't go there? But if, yeah, that's how it works. So that's going to be easy. Let's go back to our position. All right. Any comments, Ben?
No.
Nothing. Okay.
I think king g2,
Rook g6 check.
and then
No, if king g2, well, this is the same position, right?
Oh, well then king h1 is the.
No, the answer is king f1. The very not obvious. You don't do that. You don't put the king. You move the king away from your pawn. You're not supporting the promotion square, but you are shouldering the king. You don't let the king to f2. That's the entire idea, and that's a draw. And as a general rule of thumb, thanks to one of the greatest chess coaches ever, Mark Dvoretsky, we know that in his book, a little bit hard to read his book. In my opinion, it's the best endgame manual ever, in my opinion. But it's a bit of a tedious task to read the entire book, but it's a must read for whoever wants to become a good player. He said, sort of sound like you're always in a safe zone. You're always in the safe zone if your king is ahead of your pawn. So just having that in mind, you would think about going king g2, even if you're not sure about it. But after he played h2, check there, and oops, king f2. Now if you promote queen, there will be a skewer. Rook h6 check takes the queen, and he played knight, but that knight doesn't get anywhere. That knight, we need a I, J, K, maybe some more files that would have saved the knight, but not enough. We don't have any more files on the right side, unfortunately. Okay, so lesson number 1 and 2. The obvious move is not always the answer. Second, know your position. And how do you learn your position again? What did I say about it? Play it over the board and learn the technique over the board. Do not reduce it to memorize ideas. Any game will not be learned that way. Play it over the board. All right. Very well. Now let's get to some of the games from GRENKE. Okay. Okay, starting easy or difficult? Easy. Well, we have a voting going on. We have a 1-1. We need 2 more votes. I personally. Well, let's just start with this one then first. This is a game between Viswanathan as black against Francisco Vallejo, the best Spanish player for over a couple of decades, I guess. He was world champion under 18 in 1999, I guess, or something. So that made him number 1 in his country. So that's 2 decades, right? Something like that. So e4, c6, knight c3, d5. Well, and there's a okay. I'll tell you the story later. So knight f3. This is called the 2 knights system against the Caro-Kann. So there are many ways to play it. He played bishop g4, h3 takes, queen takes, and then e6. So black gave up his light square bishop, but now all of his pawns are on light squares. So since the bishop is gone, we're okay to do that, right? Because we're not worried about our bishop turning bad, right? So that is one problem down. And also, the position is rather closed. So given the fact that the position is closed, we're not that worried about the power of 2 bishops, right? All right, so g3, knight f6, a3. Don't know why he played a3, but I'm sure he had a plan. Well, I mean, one thing is that d3 there's bishop b4, so maybe he was preparing the move d3 to prevent the move bishop b4. Bishop c5, d3, castle, bishop g2, knight d7. So Rishi, 5 times world champion, one of my legend as a kid. I know he's still a legend, but he will always be a legend. But for me, one of my heroes, let's put it that way, one of my heroes as a kid, he just do it very simple. Bring the pieces to the optimal square and the minors first, right? We still don't know. And then castle. Now, on which side of the board shall we play as black? Queen side, right? Because white has more space already well established over there, and now he's preparing the move f4. Besides, our pawn is on e6. That means we have less space on the king side than space on the queen side. With the pawn on d5, we have more tendency to have more space to the queen side, right? To the other side of the board. So he played b5. Makes sense, right?
I scared myself. I looked at that.
What's that?
I scared myself. I looked at that.
All right. So I want to. My plan is simple. I want to go a5 b4. kick that knight, open the lines, because that's where I can play. That's where I have my pieces. That's where I have more space. And now by playing this move, b5, he gained even more space, right? Any comments or questions? Okay. Queen d1 was played. I think queen e2. Oh, the funny story was that I actually had seen this game before. It was played in Brazil when I was a coach with the back at the time the Iranian youth team, and someone I was watching the games, and someone in some other board, not my player, played the exact same position. That's very funny, and that's the only other game in the same position. So that was funny. Because I was like, yeah, I saw this, and then I was like, oh, I've seen this, somebody have played it before. I was like, that's not an important game, but okay. I was there. Queen d1, queen b6. So it prevents d4. Yep. By the way, I did not analyze these these games with engine, because we're talking about critical moments with the way humans should think, right? If you know the answers, we just, oh, that is so obvious, but that's not really the case. You have to understand the position yourself. I check for the blunders. So the moves are I suppose the moves I have are blunder free, but are not like so deep. I just check that if it's not losing immediately because of a blunder or something. So these are the ideas I had personally. So queen e2 and a5. I like the way Vichy played. First of all, queen b6 controls d4, doesn't let the move d4 happening. And now a5, he's gaining more space. So I like that. King h1. Now why he played king h1? Preparing the move f4. And then here Vichy played the move d4. I'm not a big fan of this one. Although it's very hard to, I also don't have a suggestion yet. I did not manage to convince myself that this can be a good move, because after this and he plays e5. Also, by the way, knight d1 is a move, but you know, from b1 you have a better future. You lose more tempi, but the knight gets to f3, right? This will be rerouted to f3, of course, after f4. Whereas after d1, even if you go f4 and knight f2, the knight is on the way of your pieces. Whereas on f3, it can join the assault with knight g5, right? All right, so knight b1, and he played e5. Otherwise, the move e5 by white could be dangerous. f4, and then bishop comes to e4, maybe eyeballing, attacking on h7, or just simply the move f4. So he played e5, then knight d2 was played. Okay, bishop d6. This is a very good drop back, right? We have to free the c pawn to be pushed. Now let's have a view of this position. It is transposing to a form of King's Indian pawn structure, right? With a very odd piece imbalance, because usually in King's Indian you have all the minor pieces on the board. Here, black's best bishop is gone, right? On the other hand, white is few tempi behind the attack, and black's structure is not optimal, because that knight on f6, if you go f4, f5, and then g4, g5, could be kicked easily, right? So it's a little bit hard to judge, but that bishop should be dropped back, because you want to go c5, c4, right? That's what black's plan is, to open the c file. So that's black's plan. So that makes sense to me. f4, queen c7. That queen also should come back. F takes e5 is really bad. You just take with the bishop, g4, and then you can put the bishop on f4 even, or you can even take with the knight. This sacrifice doesn't do anything. Rook takes f6. So you can do this move and then c5, and then you create a very strong blockade, puts an end to white's attack. So here f5 was played. I expected this move, and then he played knight b6. So you may say, well, wow, wait a second. This knight is moving away from the king's side. Isn't it supposed to stay there to help the king, to defend the king? And computer might disagree with me, but I think this makes sense, because it supports the move c4. When you go c5, c4, it supports the c4 square, and frees the d7 king for the knight. The knight from f6 goes to d7, so that when you go g4, g5, the knight can go to d7. What we should be worried about is that already the move f5 is committed, so white's attack will start rolling. So when was the critical moment? Now I want to ask you, was it the moment d4, or was it now? It's really hard to optimize here because he has already committed to the pawn structure change, Anand. So he has to go by the flow. He has to go by, okay, I'm going to place the pieces according to the pawn structure. So the critical moment was here. One of the critical moments in chess that you always have to remember are those moments that you are changing the formation of the pawn structure for both, for both parties. This was the critical moment. Now, do I have a recommendation yet? No, but it seems white's attack is getting dangerous, so at least d4 should be looked at critically. So, now f5, knight b6, g4, c5. I don't know why he played knight f3. I honestly, from here till end of the game, it's a little bit hard for me to understand what Vallejo is doing, because I think he takes his time too much. I would have gone g5, knight to e8 or knight d7, and then f6. And I want to play queen h5 now, and if they go g6, I was thinking h4, h5. I don't need my knight, and then transfer the rook. That would be faster. So I mean, if g6, I'm not sure if this is a good move. Probably is not. h4, maybe he didn't like this move h5, but then I think bishop f3, and then I can sack the bishop. Well, en passant is what black wants, because now
The king is sitting there cold.
now the king, yes, sits on h7 maybe, and this pawn is actually on the way. Although I'm not sure if even that works, because this knight can come here and attack. So even that is not clear to me. So I was thinking this would have been very dangerous. I'm sure they both have seen things and they're way better players than I am, but this looks very dangerous to me. So, but he took his time. He played knight f3. Vallejo, he played this move. I have not had the chance to look at the post-game analysis. They may both agree that this is dangerous. But not only with the knight on f3, even if you play g5, there is knight h5, because now the queen has been blocked by the knight on f3, so that you cannot actually go g5 easily, because the knight goes to h5 now, and it stays close to the king and creates a threat and stops black's attack. So c4, right? That makes sense. So what was a critical moment for white? g5. He had a series of forced moves. If you see a series of forced moves, that's when you have to pause and think one more time. You say, oh, wait a second. Now there are a series of forced moves. This can lead to maybe a forced win for me, because g5, f6. This we can. I mean, black should go back, right? He cannot do anything about it. Otherwise, it will lose a piece. So this is. I'm sure he spent a lot of time here, but this is again. He couldn't come to a term with the move g5. That's, I have to watch the video and then decide to see what he said about this move g5. But yeah, this was the critical moment. But the next moves are kind of rather hard to. Again, now g5. There is a problem with knight h5. So you play bishop g5, knight d7. But now, okay, white is fully developed, fine, but you need those pawns to break through. He cannot do much with the pieces, because there isn't enough space to I mean, all these squares are covered, right? I mean, the pawns are sitting still tight. I mean, they haven't moved anywhere. So he tried something. He played f6, and of course, Anand played this strong move g6, right? You don't let that f takes g7 happens, which completely shatters the black's shelter. So g6, bishop h6, rook fc8, combines defense. Rook has to move with the attack. You want to play c takes d3 and rook to queen to c2, right? This is what we want to do, right? If I remove the queens off the board, who is winning? Black, because white's attack is gone and black is dominant on the queen side. Black is winning on the queen side because so much space. All the pieces are ready to jump, and after cd, this square becomes weak, right? After cd3, this is, oops, what happened? After this move, this square becomes weak, and then just black's pieces can roll and sit on those weakest squares and start winning material, the pawn on b2 and everything. So, knight g5, and here comes the key move that I think Vallejo missed. Now, he's coming to checkmate Bishop G7, Queen F2, Queen H4, coming for the checkmate. Now, everyone, and also our online audience, what did Vishy do? He felt the danger, he sensed the danger, and found a critical way to react. Any comments? Any questions? A very calm day. Ben likes calm days. He feels decent in those days.
Chess King suggests knight f6.
F8 or F6?
F6.
It doesn't work though, because the bishop's still protected the knight.
So no. Knight takes pawn, knight takes F6?
Yeah.
No, the rook takes it.
And then he's trying to pin the rook with the bishop to get the knight with the bishop.
No, F7, you take on F7,
Okay.
you see, and the bishop, yeah.
Some of the answers are easier to shoot down than others.
Okay, tell me, I can address some of them. You guys have some time.
Oh, so knight f8, right?
Knight F8, okay, that is a normal move, yeah, okay.
Oh, not the right move, okay.
What's that?
Not the right move though?
Well, how many weak squares do you have? That's the critical thing you have to understand.
Bishop f8.
Oh, bishop f8, yeah.
Got a lot of suggestions for bishop f8.
That is the, well, if someone looked it up in the game, not a great job, but good job, everyone, good job. Don't check the game. Yes, bishop f8 is the move. I love this move, but the depth of it, I mean, this is forced, first of all. Takes. So h7 is protected. Now it comes to g7. What is so beautiful about Anand's idea is that, well, suppose I go queen f2 now. He played queen e1. Suppose I go queen f2. How do you avoid? I'm going to do queen h4, queen h6, and mate. How do you stop that? Okay,
Knight e6.
I take with the knight. Then I play f7 check, and then I checkmate on f6 this time.
So,
So you cannot defend g7. What can you do instead? You see, you don't focus on what is so obvious. What is so obvious is that I want to defend g7, but what are the ways to defend g7? They say in life, do not eliminate a question, right? Face your problem. Do not erase the problem. But sometimes in chess it works. Just erase the problem. Where the problem is, the pawn on f6, right? So I go knight bd7, queen h4, rook a6. Now if the queen goes to h6, I just take on f6, right?
Oh, and then the knight. Okay. If he takes the knight, can
Just in time, right?
Yeah.
So face your problems in life, but in chess you can erase the problems. That's okay. Queen e1, knight e7, same thing. a4. Okay, he tries to create some complications, make the water a bit muddy, but okay, takes, rook a4, and then cd3. And okay, Anand just dismisses the. Now, if he goes queen h4, he can just take on f6. So removes all the problem once for all. Knight f3, knight e6. Okay, now controls the f4 square, g5 square, and after queen h4, just king h7. Now the king has enough space to defend himself. Excellent play by Anand. And now look at that bishop on g2. Now that bishop is a problem. It is just a big pawn. g5, h5, rook back to a1, but now the knights are very solid, defending everything, and it's time to just go to his house. F2 takes, bishop f1, queen b3, knight d2, and what Anand does is that just he takes away all of the tricks and all of the counterplay. The position is winning. He just makes the best move. So now he went for some complications, maybe his last resource, Vallejo, and he played this one. And I was like, okay, I'm not interested. I take this one too. He picked up 2 pieces already, right? Let me do it again. He picked 1, 2, right? I just counted the pieces. I was like, I have enough. I take this one. Takes, and he goes rook h8. Dismiss the queen, and picks up this pawn too. Now he's up a pawn. He has 2 knights and a rook. So he has 2 knights, a rook, and a pawn. That is, okay, the knight, I was told it's 3.5, but okay, let's go with 3. 6, 5, 11, and the pawn is 12, and the queen is 9. So 3 pawns up. That's enough to win, huh? Check, king e7, queen e3 check. We have to blockade it. The king has enough shelter, he can defend himself. b4, takes, rook b8, queen c4, king e7, and then it's time to resign. Everything is going to fall apart. Knight f4 check. Now the thing is that now this pawn is very valuable. This knight goes check, this one comes here, black, the king has a shelter, and in the meantime we're attacking too. So everything is just working perfectly. All right, very nice game, right? Good, very good. Any questions, Ben, we have to address or no? All right. So, given the amount of time we have, I am going to, this one will take some work. This one also was very beautiful, but it takes some work. I'm going to ask 2 simple questions. So in this game, Naiditsch against Svidler, the German now representing Azerbaijan Grandmaster Naiditsch, he didn't play really his best chess, and this is one of the rare lines in Spanish exchange, and they got into this position. Black is very comfortable. He has a very nice bishop sitting on c8. It can go b6, c5, bishop b7, becoming very strong. And in particular, the move f5 is not possible, right? Because then it gives away this beautiful square for the knight to go to e5. Now, this should be a different color when I do it this with the, okay, yeah. So both sides try to improve their position. Then b6, knight d3, a5. Well, I think c5 is not good because it gives up the d5 square. So he goes a5, rook e1, bishop a6. He's trying to eliminate the knight now. So if he simplifies and white really cannot push his pawns, the game will be just balanced. He goes knight f2. He's probably trying to play for the win. So rook e8, a3. It's a decent move. f6, preventing the move e5. So neither side can really make so much progress. So we could say it's approximately balanced. But somehow white starts to self-destruct a little bit. Knight e2, bishop e7, knight g3. Yeah, well, the knight on g3 protects the pawn on e4, but so it was doing so when it was on c3, right? So I'm not sure where the improvement is. So maybe he just tries to maneuver around, see maybe going to f5. So c5. Now the knight is on c3 to go to d5. Even if it was there, you could just capture it with the bishop. Now, in the past 3 moves, who improved his position? Black. Well, yes, and I think this was a critical moment. Whether it's time for white to bail out and try to make a draw, because it's not worse, or if he's up to something, he has to have a clear plan. Because look at the next 2 moves. White's knight is on g3. I don't know what it does. right? I mean, it does the same job as it was doing on c3, right? It doesn't really, I mean, these pawns on g7 and h7, all these pawns are well protected. You're not going to get to them. And after c5, now that bishop on b7 is a monster. And black has improved his pawn structure, right? Because black's main problem in Spanish exchange is that those crippled pawns, like, I don't know if you know it or not, but I just ask you, you know, if I remove all of the pieces, except, I mean, if you just walk right into the pawn endgame, white is winning, right? You know that. So, given this position with all these pieces on the board, the fact that black is pushing the pawns and creating some plans, maybe you can end up trading some pawns and then the endgame would not be that bad for you. So, knight f5, queen f7, rook to d1. All right, I cannot play knight to e7, of course, but I can go knight f8, protecting d7 square. And now he's planning just to kick the knight with g6. I told you, f5 wasn't a, it was not a an outpost. So now, but now, look at this. The knight on f8 will go to e6, which is a nicer square than g6, right? Because it's central. So c3, okay, now there's also this hole in here which the queen has access to, right? So this move covers, because now after g6, okay, he played a4 first to fix the position. But now, what the main problem, the main plan behind this move c3 was to do what? After g6, knight moves knight e6, the knight cannot go to e4, right? Because this was going to happen, right? Is that right? So this is supposed to control this square. Well, what happens is that now I have a square to use. So black plays a4, white plays h3, and he plays knight e6. All right, so far so good. And he drops the knight back to g3. Can we say black is the one who is playing in this position? And why is that? Because he has pressure against the white's pawns, and white really cannot improve his majority. He cannot really push the pawns, right? And he has immediate targets. The b2 pawn. I mean, I can go with the queen to b3. I have the knight attacking the pawn on f4. The bishop sitting nicely, and the knights have no future. These two knights. So move bishop c6 was played. Rook d2. Knight d8. Where does this knight going? This move, I give it exclam.
B7.
And then?
And then to D6.
And then? C4 and attacking e4 and everything. Excellent maneuver. So bishop c6, this regrouping idea was very excellent. Bishop c6, knight d8, knight b7, knight d6. And it's very hard to see if white can do anything about it. King h2, knight to d6. Wow, now we have a target. So if you want to decide on the critical moment for black, which Svidler masterfully exploited, is this moment. Black is better because every piece in black's camp is better than white's piece, and white's majority is crippled, cannot really go forward. It's not crippled, it's not efficient. And now it's time for black to regroup. When you don't see an immediate idea, you have to regroup your pieces for the certain task. And here masterfully, bishop c6 first, then knight d8, knight b7, knight d6. Improve the knight. And this leads to almost a winning position, that one. So he found the critical moment, Svidler. Bishop c6, rook d2, knight to d8, queen d3, knight b7, king h2, knight d6. Black achieved everything. Rook d1. And now what shall we do? Rook b1.
And then knight c4.
Then I go, for example, king back to g1. Well, the knight on d6 also targets which square? e4, right? So
What was your question?
so the knight on d6 also targets the e4 square, right? So what can we do about the e4 square?
You can drive the queen away from protecting it. Or by bishop to b5.
Well, what are the defenders? The knight on g3, the knight on f2, the queen on d3, right? Which one is the easiest target? The knight on g3, right? h5.
So simple.
So simple, yeah, but effective. Rook e1, h4. So now, look at just white's pieces and think about how well they were placed 12 moves ago. They were on c3 and f3. And look at the knights now. Queen b3. Attacking b2, e5, kind of desperation. F takes e5, f takes e5, and queen takes b2. Now, oh, oops, you cannot take on d6. e1 is pinned. Rook e2, and then queen back to b5. Now I still cannot take on d6. Queen c2, and now we go knight c4. Now the pawn on a3 will collapse, and the position is losing. After e6, knight a3, white resigned. Beautiful masterpiece, really. Positional play, right? Improving the positions. Slightly, bishop c6, knight d8, knight b7. It was very nice, very nice. See how he managed to improve the knight from g6 to d6. So, what was the missing moment for the missing moment for white? He had to, I think, bail out in this moment. Let's go back. He had to, in this moment after f6, he had to think about if he goes knight d3 and he takes with the c pawn, if that's okay or not. And it's kind of balanced. Or some other ways, because if he stays for too long, he cannot improve his position, and you see what happened to his position. You see what happened. It was not easy to make a simple move for white after this. Because how do you improve your position? And he tried to sit and wait, but he just gradually went down, right? Because black had a plan, but white didn't have a plan. White's only plan is the majority, but the majority was already being stopped. So the critical moment was, I think, is this moment when, okay, the pieces are fine. Should I put the knight on d3 or not? Or if I want to improve, maybe I should put this knight on f2 somehow. I don't know, like maybe playing this, then maybe like this, maybe, right? Putting it on f3. So I didn't get to talk about the cognitive biases. Maybe next time I come back to St. Louis. These are my last days here as the GM resident, but next time I'll come back, maybe I'll talk about them.
Actually,
That was, yeah.
I'm sorry, in this position there, wasn't really the weakness that that black was able to fix the b2 square? So like something like,
No, what you mean the idea behind the a4?
yeah.
Well, the thing is,
But if white plays a4, like in that position right there, doesn't he?
well, which moment? This moment you're talking?
No.
Well, now also white is not trying to play
no,
b4
I'm
too.
talking about before that. Like,
Which moment? Here?
right there, yeah.
Well,
So-
I'm trying to play queen b4 and kind of messing with the pawn structure over there. So he prevents the move queen b4.
No, no, I'm talking about on the next move instead of you were talking about knight d6. I was just like wondering if white played. Oh, I
White
see.
played what?
And then queen goes b4. Okay.
Yeah. No, but in this moment also, I forgot to mention one thing. c3 not only controls d4, but also prepares the move b4. That's why he played a4. He kind of fixed the pawn structure.
No.
That's why he stops the move b4 there. All right. Any questions to address?
No, sir.
No, sir? Okay. Well, thank you for joining me tonight, and have a good rest of the night. Take care.